This week on Filthy Hope.
I know a lot of people that have left church because of one-on-one things that haven't been reconciled, weirdly. Well, no, not weirdly. I know a lot of people that have just felt really hurt by singular groups, or smaller chunks of a larger community, and yeah, the church the broad church can't seek reconciliation. It can't make that first step. It's, for some reason, it's always the onus is on the individual.
It's being interpersonal.
Yeah, whereas why? But the person hurt feels this hurt from the whole group, from the whole church.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, I left, insert church name, because when I was there, this happened and the church did nothing, or the church, perpetuated this or whatever, or they didn't step in. And I just really wonder, how do we get better at that?
I guess to shift this a tiny bit, we had also talked a little bit, and this fits in with your story a fair bit as well. Ness and I recently did an episode talking, I guess recently now, would have been 10 or 15 weeks ago now, but talking about this idea of forgiveness. I know from speaking to you that there are some of the more challenging parts of shifting through different church cultures and picking up roots and replanting somewhere else is that that isn't always tidy. And just like that one example that you shared, there's relational things that happen there that can be tricky to reconcile. I guess what role does forgiveness has forgiveness played in that transition for you? And has that been easy? Has that been hard?
Well, maybe I might go off of the example with that band I was in. Yeah. As maybe the way to go about it. With the podcast, one of the things that you guys did a while back on is something too big to forgive. Yeah. I felt like there might be something to say about how can you forgive in the face of no remorse on the other half. An institution will not apologize to you. It's not able to. There's too much work, I think, and that's really hard. Again, I can't stress enough, I am not queer, and I think there's a lot to be said with the institutional hurt that has happened to queer people. So, keep that in mind when I'm talking about very specific hurts. But yeah, with that hurt, I did actually end up rebuking my friend's rebuke about maybe 6 months after. I spent 3 months weekly preparing with one of the pastors of my church, understanding that verse, and I went to him and I read it all out. And me and this person, we're fine now. We're good, and I think he's a really good friend, and I love hanging out with him. But at the time, we're teenagers still. And so I came to him and I had this whole thing written out, 3 pages of this book, and I was saying, oh man, I just want to say, when this happened, it made me feel like this, and this has happened because of that. And he, after, I talked to him and I poured my heart out for about half an hour, and he was like, oh yeah, sorry you feel like that. I do think we did the right thing, blah, 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 but yeah, no, that sucks, and I hope we're cool. And I'm maybe not giving it as much nuance as I should, but that was kind of the vibe. Yeah. And I was just so desperate to reconcile. I was just like, yeah, sweet, no, we're good, and we weren't good. I wasn't good at the end of that. And you still, but we're now in relationship again, and even if I don't actively spend time with him, they're gonna be around. We've got a lot of mutuals, we're going to be at the same parties. And thankfully, I'm happy to see this person. It's good to hang out with him. I've seen him quite recently. It's nice. But, and all that group, right? But they're going to be in my life. And so how do I reconcile the fact that I'm still carrying around this burden? In that podcast you guys did, you talked a lot about how there's unfair burden on the victim to initiate forgiveness. And I wanted to add to that, though, that the victim is already under the burden of the suffering of shame or hurt. And it's very rarely just a singular, I feel hurt for this period, and now we're in this stalemate, this kind of Mexican standoff of who's going to be the first to apologize, and I'm just waiting. I'm fine, but I'm just waiting. It's like, no, I'm currently still suffering the repercussions of that event. When I got kicked out of that band, I stopped songwriting. Like I just couldn't songwrite anymore because I felt like I wasn't good at it. I stopped playing as much. When I didn't feel like I could do worship music, for example, but I also felt like I wasn't a very good musician. Meanwhile, I was like studying music. I was doing saxophone, and it was really great and surrounded by a lot of good friends. But there was this part deep in me that felt this sense of shame and anxiety, and I was predisposed to that, and thankfully had help for that and sought help for that. But I was already burdened at the time, and so I didn't mind seeking reconciliation because my hope would be that it would alleviate the burden. But even today, I think there's this part of me that, although it grows smaller with time, I still, God is a God of justice, and I'm a creature who craves justice, and they go on, and they're all having awesome careers. About this year, my dad retired from the opera orchestra, and I was in the car on the way back from his final performance, and the vibes were high. It was really good. We were off to a really lovely kind of celebration event, and I was scrolling on my phone in the car because I'm so social, and saw that the dad of one of my friends posted an old video of all of us in the garage performing because they've kind of reformed a band since then, which you should go check it out. I'm not going to name the name, but if you do know who I'm talking about, they're great and you should go see them live. But he posted and he goes, "Oh, I remember when these guys were in the garage and they were rehearsing," and he tags his son, the two other friends that were in the old band, and then the other guy who is not in the new band. Oh my gosh, this is getting convoluted. The other guy who's not in the new band, but not me. And I was like, whoa, I'm being erased from this story. I don't fit into the thing. It was the first time I've ever felt like almost they felt a shame around me. This minister person doesn't want to admit that I was a part of that at any point. And this old anger from, it's been 7 years or something, just like came out of nowhere, and I got furious. I was in the back of this car, and I showed my wife, and I was like, "What? I'm gonna do a big swear.
Warning!"
I was like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
What is going on?"
Yeah.
I got so mad. I said to Heather, I was like, "Tomorrow morning, Sunday, I'm going to his church. I'm going to the senior minister's church. I'm gonna confront him." I was like totally furious, and I really thought I'd squashed it. Squashed my care about this.
Yeah.
But no, there's this hurt that sits deep, and I'm still figuring out how to forgive in the face of no remorse.
Yeah.
The closest I've gotten is God's wrath. Actually, Ness kind of brought it up, but just trusting that in the end, however it looks, they'll atone for that in the same way that I'll atone for all the times I've screwed someone over. But it still leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I don't know if you've had experiences like that.
I have, and I think you're totally right that it doesn't matter how much you think you've not compartmentalized, but it doesn't really matter how well you think you've dealt with it internally. Something like that will happen, and all of a sudden it just brings all of that old emotion back, and you go, oh, maybe I'm not actually over that. Just time had papered over it a little bit, and it had shrunk a little bit over time, but it's still there. I think it's a really, I wrestle with it too, because I have a particular situation that I'm picturing in my own head where there is an acknowledged thing that hasn't been shown what I would assume or think would be the necessary remorse. That still is unresolved.
Yeah.
And in the wake of that, there's still relationship.
Yeah.
But that thing is still there.
The wedge.
The wedge is still there.
Yeah.
The nail in the wall is still kind of there. And it's not, it doesn't make itself known until you accidentally snag your finger on it. And then you, oh yeah, that thing's still there. I don't think it's enough to just ignore that.
Yeah.
But then, how do you, because the other thing is, like, if it's been years and years and years, my self-conscious thing kicks in of like, am I being the dick for bringing this up again?
Yeah.
But
what a drama queen.
But I'm the one that is, the other person clearly, like, that wasn't a big deal for them at the time. And so it's absolutely not a big deal for them now. So it's actually all on me.
Yeah,
because they're not going to bring it up. To them, it's not a problem. They're maybe even not aware that was as big of a deal as it was in the first place. But I think the important thing is you can't even begin to approach that if there isn't relationship there.
Yeah.
So the fact that there is relationship there means that there is, like, that door's always ajar.
Yeah.
To approach that in a way that's not just going to inflame it again.
Yeah. I think a lot.
I don't know what that looks. If you've got an answer, I'd like email us.
Yeah, bring it in.
Yeah.
Like, has anyone ever told you the thing where, you vent about it, and then I often get the bring it to God thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten, like, what do you do with prayer in that situation?
It's a good question. I mean, it's interesting because what prayer looks like for me has changed a lot. I write prayers now.
Whoa.
That's for me. Like, I have notebooks that I carry around with me everywhere.
Wow.
This might sound ridiculous given that I've been doing an oral based podcast for the last 2.5 years, but I don't consider myself proficient at communicating well.
Yeah.
Verbally.
I would have been surprised if you had said you podcast your prayers. That would have been
That would have been crazy. Yeah, just wild. For myself.
Yeah. Just me and God. You set up the other mic.
Yeah. That's right.
So do you write letters or?
I treat it almost like meditation.
Wow.
Where I try not to form anything preemptively.
Yeah.
It actually started as a, listeners will quite possibly be familiar with Joel McCarrow, who's a poet and creative. He's tangentially related to the Uniting Church as well. Taught me at a poetry workshop of all things, an exercise that I do all the time now, and I used to teach students and use it as a warm-up exercise where you set yourself a timer for as long as it's slightly uncomfortably long, an amount of time, so it could be 5 minutes, and you're just not allowed to stop moving your pen on the page. And sometimes you start with a prompt, sometimes you start with a blank page. The blank page can be very intimidating. But the idea is that you're trying to bypass the part of your brain that edits as you write. And so I use that fairly regularly as a prayer exercise now, especially if I'm feeling like agitated about something or frustrated or confused about something. Sometimes they go for like 40 minutes.
Whoa.
I've got like pages and pages and most of it's nonsense.
That's really cool though.
But you and then you put it away, you close it. And you pick it up again 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And you can look back with a bit of clarity on some of the stuff. And I go at it with a Sharpie. This is the other thing that I learned from Joel is when you are able to write with that freedom without worrying about whether it's good or not, you then give yourself the freedom later to literally just scratch out everything that isn't great.
Wow.
So you literally go out with a Sharpie, like that shit, cross that out, that shit, cross that out. But when I bring that to that prayer exercise, I go at it with a highlighter. I go like, oh, that's interesting. That stands out to me. Why did I say that? Highlight. And then that then actually, it's like this self-fulfilling prayer thing where I go, that sticks out to me. I need to pray about that.
Yeah.
And then,
Has that kind of prayer ever brought you resolution to the kind of unresolved forgiveness, I want to say?
I don't think it's necessarily brought resolution. What it has done is brought really good clarity for me as to the actual detail of what it is that is still like what that tension still is.
Yeah.
What actually is the thing about the thing that person said that is still bothering me? It isn't necessarily that they said it.
Yeah.
And I think so often with situations like that where there's unresolved tension or unforgiven things that are still causing, grief or tension or unforgiveness that is just hanging over, is because I think sometimes we're not actually sure exactly what we want to forgive people for.
Yeah.
We're still stuck in the I'm feeling the emotion. And until we're actually able to, that's why that exercise that I do is I can read it weeks later outside of the present emotion that I have to be in to write it. So you can kind of look at it with a bit of objectivity and go, it wasn't necessarily these words, it's the implication that X, Y, and Z. Yeah. They think this about me.
Yes.
That's the thing,
not
the words themselves. Whereas when we don't get there, we're still stuck on the I feel shame, I feel anger, I feel whatever. And forgiving someone because of how they made you feel. Yeah. That's one thing, certainly, but there's not a whole lot of agency that other person can take in that. Yeah. I'm sorry that you feel whatever. Yeah. That can bring healing, but that's nowhere near as powerful as going, when I said this to you, X, Y, and Z, I acknowledge that led to X, Y, and Z for you. Whether it's behavior, like you were describing before about what that led to in terms of like not being able to write songs at the same fluency and all of those different things. Until you can actually get into the detail of what that actually meant for you, you can't get to that level of reconciliation. So I don't know. That may not be helpful because it's hard work. Yeah. And it actually you have to be willing to kind of dive into it. Yeah. Dive into those feelings and go, what is it that's bringing that up for me?
Yeah. Which I think if Ness were here, she'd bring up, it almost feels doubly unfair for the person who has suffered that exchange to have to deal with that, right? Like to have
100%, yeah.
But I think that, I don't want to say that's life, but there's an element of relationship that comes with that part of the deal that you're going to, you are human and you are capable of hurting one another and you're capable of putting wedges in between one another. And it's do you have the kind of relationship where that wedge can be removed in a way that's really comfortable? I'm very fortunate to have really close friends such as yourself where I feel like you and I have that rapport where anything in between us, which we've had in the past with all our beefs that we've had.
We hate each other.
Yeah. No, this is just a show for the podcast. But, I think we've been quite good at pretending to take the wedge out, but no, really taking the wedge out between us if we needed to. And other relationships I have with, long-term friendships. I'm fortunate to be really close friends with someone, shout out Tilly, who, we've been friends since we were 0 because our parents were in the pit of Phantom of the Opera together.
Sick.
I think it might have been Beauty and the Beast. Anyway, something. And we've been friends ever since. And, we had proper like childhood spats at one another and moments where I've been less of a good friend than I should have been and stuff like that, where I think we've always been in the habit of being really comfortable dissecting that, opening it up, and actually removing it before it can fester.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's really hard to do that. I think
in my experience though, in the limited experience I have with these sorts of situations, like whenever I have thought that the other person isn't interested in reconciliation, I've been so completely wrong.
Oh yeah.
And I that's not 100% of my experience. I've certainly had, like, there are a stack of people that aren't around in my life anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's no bad blood, but there just wasn't that mutual desire to maintain a relationship. But more often than not, in the relationships that I care about, when there is that little thing, that wedge, that something, that little piece of grit in between us that's an irritant, the narrative I have told myself is that they are still mad at me.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a burden for them to reconcile that, when actually, whenever I've actually just grown some balls and said, hey man, I miss you, can we go get a coffee?
Yeah.
100%. I've been waiting, like I should have done this earlier as well. And we both say we've been shitty friends to each other.
Yeah.
Let's catch up. And then and it's such a, I think that's definitely a reflection on me in terms of maybe some, self-worth or like self-talk stuff in terms of like me being the burden in that situation. But like the reality of all of those situations have been that the other person has immediately gone, yes, I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Let's hang out. And that doesn't instantly fix it.
No.
You still got to do that when you've still got to like carefully remove that wedge in a way that's going to not hurt either of you.
Yeah.
But like more often than not in my experience, like you're not the only person that's feeling that wedge. Like the other person feels it too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How I think I was listening to the Forgiveness Pod again recently. You guys talked about, I think there's so much truth to this idea of healthy boundaries. We set up these boundaries, these conditions, and then when these conditions aren't met, it's to take care of oneself to, well, then remove yourself from that situation. Yeah. I'm going to do that annoying thing by being like, there's this one verse and I can't cite it. But there is this one verse.
Trust me, bro.
Leviticus chapter 5, verse 3.
Verse trust me.
Verse trust me, please. I remember hearing about this idea of we're so called to reconcile with one another, particularly in the church, but I think this is true of all people. That when we have beef when we have conflict with myself and another, I am to prevent myself from bringing myself to the Lord's table or for communion, which is like the bread and the wine thing, for those who don't know. I'm going to hold back from doing that until I have reconciled with that friend. I took that so seriously for a time where I didn't have communion for years. And actually, Somerset Drayton, who was on Field of Hope not long ago, I think it was 3 weeks ago or something. I was playing underneath communion at Evolve recently, and Summer just very kindly just came up to me and like handed me bread and wine. And it was the first time I'd done communion in ages, like a really long time. And that meant a lot to me actually. But we're that called to reconcile that I wonder where we're supposed to sit in Christian, like how are we supposed to, reconcile these two ideas, right? This idea that we're called to be in relationship with people. And I'm a people pleaser. I know for a fact that you are also a bit of a people pleaser. Yeah. Go team, let's go. Yeah. I mean, if that's okay with you that you're a people pleaser, I don't want to...
No, as long as you're okay with it.
As long as you're okay with me calling you a people pleaser, like I don't want to overstep. Yeah. That's just an idea, but like, well, you can bring it to the table. Maybe I'll wait till I hear from you about it. Anyway. But
I just had supervision lesson a week ago. Literally just deconstructed me being a bit anyway.
Yeah, nice.
I left it going, I need to not be a people pleaser.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. Anyway, so I know, but like as a people pleaser, I hate when people might not like me oh man, I want to be liked so bad.
Yeah.
And I think to an extent that's worked in my favor. It's given me a lot of skills in terms of like having great friendships and relationships. And I feel confident entering a party not knowing many people. And part of that is having, great experiences with therapy early doors and learning how to handle tricky relationships. But, it helped me come to Evolve the first time, just on my own. And that was great, which, by the way, if you are on your own and you do want to check out Evolve, do come. I can't wait to see you. But, that's always been a thing. However, it does have this kind of coin flip of I struggle to cut people off. I used to say that I would never do it.
Yeah.
I would never cut anyone off.
I definitely resonate with that as well.
But I've reached a point with someone in particular in my life who I'm just over it with one person, and it's you. No, it's not you. Shit. No, it's someone else in my life outside of the church who I've reached a point where I'm just like, I just don't want to see this person anymore. Like they cause me too much stress. They cause me too much hurt. I don't know what to do with that. How, like in your experience, have you ever had to cut someone out of your life? How do you reconcile that with your faith? And
yeah, I have. There's one in particular that immediately jumps out to me, and this might sound brutal. I actually think that the process of cutting that person out of my life was the process of reconciliation.
Wow.
But I recognize the tension there of like, well, me cutting this person out of my life is probably going to cause them a fair amount of hurt.
Grief, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that there is that kind of unresolved thing there of like, well, if we're called to reconciliation, surely that doesn't mean intentionally causing emotional harm to someone. And that's something that I definitely lived with, probably still do to a certain extent. Like this particular person, I heard some pretty sad news about them semi-recently, and part of me was like, no, like I kind of feel bad about that all over again.
Yeah, okay.
But I then think about what my life would look like today if I hadn't cut that person out.
Yeah.
Knowing what their trajectory has been in the last 6 years or whatever. And then you can kind of go, like at what point is that self-sabotage in allowing yourself to be attached to that? It's like I've said this before, but it's like deciding not to swim in polluted water.
Yeah.
And that sounds kind of brutal because that's a person.
Yeah.
That's an image bearer.
They're the pollution metaphor. Yeah.
And, if you want to get into the detail of that, I think more accurately we could talk to the behavior and the fruit.
Yes.
Is poisonous. Not the person themselves.
Yes.
But at what point do you have to say to yourself, like, maintain the effort and the social capital and all of the things required in maintaining relationship with this person is just going to it for me, it actually also became an issue of, is this getting in the way of my discipleship? And it was.
Yeah.
It was getting in the way of my own faith and my own discipleship journey. It was getting in the way of my own ability to disciple other people, my own ability to be able to be present to other people and actually be a good friend to other people. I don't know. To be honest, I still feel bad about it sometimes.
Really?
But then it's that balancing out of like that relief.
Yeah.
I can't, and I feel, even just saying that now, like a pang of guilt just went through me, like in describing the relief that I felt when I realized that I didn't have to see that person anymore.
Yeah.
I can't even describe how good that felt.
Yeah.
Which is a really
a
muddy
tension.
Thing at the center of that.
Knowing, I think I know what you're talking about. And there's a really important person in my life that was also deeply affected by this person. I think having talked to you about this, there's a chance that like we might not have even met had you continued to be in a relationship.
Quite possibly.
With this person.
My life would look considerably different.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I think.
Yes, but obviously the me thing is the most important part.
Obviously, but only if that's okay with you.
Only if that's okay with me. Yeah, that's okay. It is okay with me. So you're good. No, that's yeah. That I know what you mean.
And the tricky thing is that it is true that I feel bad about that sometimes. It is also true at the same time that I know that I made the right decision.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know how I know that I made the right decision, but I know that I made the right decision.
Yeah.
And I do think that capital R reconciliation could only happen in that firm boundary being put up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, not just between me and this other person, but between like a whole interconnected ecosystem of relationship was broken, healed as a result. So I don't know. That's very. That's not a neat and tidy way of approaching that, but like I think in my experience that is how that worked.
Yeah, the thing you said about fruit is really interesting. You know, to leave a community, and for me, it was the church, right? There's this idea of with teaching, and I think this phrase gets thrown around a lot in churches. But you know, if you want to judge teaching, judge it by its fruit. The idea being, what is the result of that teaching being placed? How does it grow? What does it look like in practice? For me, a lot of my decision making of leaving the church was I wasn't exactly happy with the fruit of where and to be clear, a lot of the fruit of where I was at was really good fruit. Yeah. But there was this one topic where I felt maybe that fruit is not what I want it to be, and for me, and the way it was sitting in me. And so now I'm at a point where I feel very confident about the teaching that I'm hearing, and maybe sometimes it's less rigorous than what I'd like, or I would like it to be more robust. For example, you know, I think the Anglican Church is very lucky to have a lot of fantastic preachers, like really excellent, where the teaching is really robust. But I wasn't willing to hold that tension. I wasn't, and I was willing to, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I was willing to put up with how the church felt about queer people for a long time, while I disagreed with them for about 1.5 years, 2 years. I tried to poke the bear about it for a while, and I ended up just getting kind of pushback from it, which is fair enough, quote unquote. But you know, but I ended up leaving because of that. And to leave, and again, an institution is not going to feel remorse. I don't know if it can. And so I guess in a way, in a similar way, you kind of have to remove yourself from that. And there's something about the language of cutting off a person where it feels like you're removing them from you, like a growth or something. And it's, it's describing a person, right?
An image bearer of God. Like,
right? Like this is someone who God loves as much as me.
Yeah.
That's another thing I really struggle with. Like the person that you might really dislike. I think, you know, hearing about Nessa's trauma, like I really understand where she comes from, and I won't speak to what that is. Like, go back and listen, because it's her stuff. But like the way that she is so, like, I'm always so impressed, and I think even not jealous, but inspired by how comfortable she is in her dislike of that person. Or sometimes it's, I remember she was saying it used to be, frankly, Schadenfreude. Like she used to revel in the idea of this, you know, this thing. And, you know, again, for those who have heard that, and I would recommend going back, you can understand why. It's really quite horrible to even think about or talk about. But there's something where, again, as a people pleaser, I struggle to feel poorly about someone, and that's a huge thing in the way of healing, and you know, you're able to forgive quite a lot to a certain point, you know, and are we in the church responsible? Like, yeah, we're called to forgive in a lot in the way that we've been forgiven, you know? You can stop me if I'm about to open up a really big can of, you know, but sin. Oh, he said it.
Yeah.
But, you know, when.
I have to bleep that.
Yeah. But, you know, with sin, right, you know, for years and years and years, I felt such a responsibility to forgive because I felt like whatever this person had done to me, I had done 100, 1,000 infinity fold to God, and I had been forgiven. You know, I was this dirty thing with sin. And there's, you know, I'm happy to also unpack, again, not a lot of nuance with this. And I think I actually find the idea of my kind of the forgiveness of my brokenness and the things I've done to my friends quite comforting as well. But, you know, I feel this responsibility to forgive in the way that I've been forgiven, you know. I think it's in the Lord's Prayer, isn't it?
Yeah, forgive us our sins, we forgive those who sin against us. Yeah.
Like, I would be really scared if God was as slow to forgive as I am.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't really know what to make of that. Do we just accept the fact that God is just better? I mean, they are better than us at this stuff, thankfully, hooray. Yeah. But like, do we just accept that we're just, we're broken and I'm allowed to hate that person, or I'm allowed to just think that they're trash, and even though that they're a child of God and God will, you know, do with them justice, and whether that means forgiving them, that would be justice theoretically if they atone for that, or, you know, repent ideally, right? If maybe God forgives them in some way, how am I supposed to accept that? And
I wonder, like, and this might sound sci-fi bullcrap, but like, we are stuck inside the flow of time.
Yeah.
We're only able to access the present moment.
Right now, yeah.
And I wonder about that sometimes when it comes to forgiveness, because the forgiveness, God's forgiveness and the salvation that we have through the resurrection is through an event that happened in the past.
Yes.
Like, we have, it's almost like that's a completely unfair advantage that God's forgiveness transcends time.
Yeah, rude.
Time and space.
Yeah.
But like, I quite earnestly, I think that like we actually sometimes, certainly me in the past, have felt like I have needed to force something into the present moment when maybe it isn't actually the right time. And maybe the ability to forgive someone is actually something that we have to earn through the process that takes time of wrestling with that desire for reconciliation when it may not be requited. There may not be remorse on the part of the other person. Maybe now isn't the time to forgive someone healthily. Maybe that it needs to happen in a month. Maybe that needs to happen in 20 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we're not going to know when the right time is unless we're actively pursuing it still. Like, it's not enough to go, oh, I can't forgive that person. Like, you know,
be done with it.
Ta-ta. Like, you know,
TTFN, friends.
Yeah, hooroo is my favorite.
Hooroo. Cheerio.
Cheerio. Like, we still have to like pursue that.
Yeah.
But we can't cram everything into the present moment. Like,
no.
Yeah. That may not make sense to anyone else, but I do have that sense.
I know what you mean. I think. How are we doing for time?
We're at about 90 minutes.
Keep cooking.
So, happy to. Yeah.
I'm enjoying this.
Yeah,
you're very wise, Jonty. Pastor Jonty Goldford.
Keep that in.
Yeah, bring that in. Double it.
Clip that. Clip that.
That's the real.
Clip
it's
that.
Just the 3 seconds of me going, oh, you're very wise, Pastor Jonty Goldford. Thank you so much. Ringtone. This is my ringtone now. I really enjoyed what you said about, I can't remember when you said it, what pod this was. Look back. Maybe you might find it. I don't know. But this idea that even once it's all over and we're dead, you know, maybe the door is still open for us. I think about that all the time. I recently read The Last Battle, which is in the Narnia series.
I know.
Cooked ending. Yeah. Cooked ending, everyone.
Yeah.
But something that
Susan.
got done. We should, let's not open up that can of worms, but we should definitely bring me back on if you want to talk about what happened to Susan.
Yeah.
Far out.
Too interested in boys.
Yeah, yuck.
Girl stuff.
Yuck. That's not very Christ-like of you.
Aslan says no.
Aslan says no to liking boys.
Yeah. She didn't go to church.
She didn't go to church hard enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, she got done bad. But the idea is that at the very end, spoilers, asterisk.
Read the Chronicles.
Read the Chronicles. Yeah, do it. Oh my gosh, definitely.
You can read each book in like a day. They're like
it's really good.
120 pages long.
But at the end, do the barn doors close? And in Aslan's country, I'm pretty sure the doors close, and it might. And I agree with C.S. Lewis on a lot. He and I, we're going 1-to-1, baby.
Yeah.
But this just might be one of those ones where I'm like, I'm just not sure the barn doors close, and that leaves a lot open. And to bring it back to forgiveness, it's like you said with the whole time thing. It's maybe one day we'll just accept it. Very long story short, I was dating someone for a really long time. We broke up. My best friend at the time started going out with her, but before they really started going into it, he kind of pulled me aside and we went out to drink, and he went, I just wanted to check in and make sure it was okay with you, that we, I go out with your ex, and we'd been apart for maybe about a month, 2 months, and at the time, I feel like I held myself pretty well. I was pretty proud of myself. I think I said, hey, man, honestly, as it stands right now, I'm just not sure I am okay with that. But can you give me a week? I want to mull on it. I love you. I really respect her. And I just want to, I want to be at terms with it because I'm going to have to see you too because you're in my life. And that would be hard for me. So can you just give me some time to think about it? And, we went out again 3 days later and he was like, hey, you okay with it? And I was like, oh, man, I'm just not sure. And then he was like, are you okay with it? Are you okay with it? And around that time, my grandmother had just passed, who I was really close with. And we were unloading the gear to, we were unloading some of her old belongings into my parents' place. And I was like I remember like the chair that her or my granddad used to sit in, and it was very emotional. And he texts me something really ratty or something, and I can't even remember what it was, but my brain just exploded, and I called him, and I was like, "You beep 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 something beep 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 beep."
Spoken Morse for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, I can't believe you would be so selfish, like doing this, blah, blah, blah. And my uncle, who was helping us unload the van, hears me on the phone to this guy. And as I go out to get the next, I hang up on this person. I'm like, blah, 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 beep you, dude, whatever, hang up. And my uncle, finds me outside as I'm going the next thing. And he's like, call your friend back right now and say sorry right now. And I was like, absolutely not. Chris, what are you on about? And he was like, I've been friends with my ex-wife for the last, 20 years or whatever. And it's made everything easier.
Yeah.
Everything. This person that I just swore off, he's in the music industry. I'm going to see him around, and my Uncle Chris was like, even if you don't feel it right now, one day you might be fine. But he was like, you need to call this guy and reconcile the best you can right now. So I did. I called him and I was like, through gritted teeth, tried to convincingly be like, hey man, look, I'm just doing this right now. Well, meanwhile, I felt absolutely no remorse, ironically, to what I was doing. And I just, and I had to just let time catch up to what I had said. But unfortunately, I think at the time, I'm not sure if he would agree with this now, but, for him, I think he felt like, maybe that was I think he was quite hurt by what I had said despite the fact that it was just me saying beep all over again. I don't know what that was about, but he felt quite hurt by that. And I think maybe kind of saw that as a bit of a great, well, now we're 1 for 1. I'm going to carry on with what I want to do, which, you're in love, do whatever you want. And they ended up being together for like 2.5 years. So it was, it was very well intentioned, I think. But, but it took me like 1.5 years, maybe 2 years to kind of get into that and to catch up with that
emotionally
apology.
Catch up. Yeah.
And that, it's kind of pulling into what you were saying about we almost have to let our hearts catch up to our actions in a way. I don't know. Or maybe just the time's not yet. Or maybe we'll die and still have it, and maybe the barn doors are still open to us forgiving that. I wonder if there'll be, I think maybe in the new creation or any, I don't know what to think about the afterlife, but I wonder if there is any need to forgive or any need to apologize in the new creation, if there is any wrongdoing.
We read all of that stuff about, every tear will be wiped from the eye and no more pain and suffering. And again, source, trust me, bro. But all these images of what the kingdom of heaven or the age to come will look like, of being a complete reconciliation between humanity and God.
Yeah.
That raises a really interesting question about unresolved stuff. Like what happens?
Yeah. Do we, and it's so easy as the victim is such a big word, but as the person experiencing the hurt, it's easy for us to imagine that, well, obviously that person's not I won't be seeing them. You know what I mean? I sometimes need to remind myself, I need to be prepared to see someone I don't expect.
Yeah.
I
just had this image in my head of like someone cuts you off in traffic and you honk them and you give them the bird and you swear at them out the window and then you both pull up next to each other at the same shopping center.
Yeah.
And you have to talk, and you have to walk past them. Yeah.
Oh, it's you. Yeah.
Yeah. But like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you go for the same lettuce?
Oh, we're both going to the bread aisle.
Yeah. Eesh. I hope he doesn't want Helga's. Helga sponsor me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've to be honest, now I say that out loud, I have been caught with that a couple of times where
you have a serious road rage problem. Iconically.
Absolutely. Yeah. But no, where I've like, behaved in a way that in retrospect I've gone, oh man, I really wish I hadn't done that. And then it's almost like God's annoying sense of humor, just planting that person back in my life.
Yeah.
Like forcing me to interact with them again.
Yeah.
And it's either you just don't acknowledge it and it's awkward, or you go, hey man, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've definitely apologized for old stuff.
Yeah.
Like old stuff. I think talk about callback. When the thing I got, the date not with the intention of marriage, I remember when I felt quite guilty about that, I think I texted that person who I went on the date with and apologized. And it was like 2 years later or something. And I was like, hey, I'm sorry I went on a date with you without the intention of marriage, or something like that. But, it's interesting how long we can feel remorseful, or like how long we can hold on to this guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's also like a people pleasing thing as well.
100%.
Yeah.
Because that's when going back to that episode that Ness and I did about forgiveness, one of the things we talked about a lot was like the function of forgiveness isn't necessarily about freeing the other person from the responsibility. It's about freeing yourself from being stuck in that state of being chained to them.
Yeah. But even still, like, yes, I agree. Yeah. I think but the rub for me is the fact that when they go, oh, sweet, see you later, and then they go, skipping along down the forest, and you're still there in the moors going like, oh, well, I guess I'll just continue feeling I feel a bit better, Yeah. But, sure, I think it cuts off the chaff a little bit, but there's still a little, I don't know, maybe the grit's still there, but I don't know, do you feel like, have you ever forgiven someone who has felt no remorse and just felt better?
No.
Yeah.
I can't think of any situation where I've forgiven someone and they... I can think of, one big instance where my forgiveness of them, or my attempt at forgiveness, was met with zero desire to reciprocate or to show any remorse.
Yeah.
That was really unsatisfying. That didn't provide closure for me.
Yeah.
I don't know what information then...
Yeah. Well, I wonder
what to do with that.
I wonder if it starts the process.
Yeah. I think that's it. And I think we're also kidding ourselves if we think these things are going to be instantaneous.
Yeah. You should take our advice word for word and it will work. No.
Money back guarantee.
No.
I think part of like forgiving someone, whether or not they show any remorse, is like, on your side of that is an acceptance of like going on that journey.
Yeah.
And doing that work, because it's not like, if they don't show any remorse, if they don't like accept any responsibility, it still sucks. Like it's actually kind of maddening.
I wonder if it's the forgiveness is the action of saying, I'm going to stop pretending that me and this person are walking in the same direction.
Yeah.
And it's actually, maybe it's just saying, hey, I'm going to start walking this way. And maybe they'll join you on that walk, and that's great. Or maybe you're just going to go on this walk alone and they're going to carry on, which is maybe why it sucks so much when you, that's the thing about online stuff. It sucks so much when you see them across a few lanes just carrying on their own business. I don't know. And you just think, man, I'm doing all this stuff and you're fine.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think social media is hell on earth.
Yeah.
You know,
totally.
Partly because of that, because we just see these snapshots of curated perfectness from people's lives, and all it does is like generate like that comparison thing. Like, oh my God, I used to be close to that person. Now they're doing this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think it's extra rough in the music industry. I feel very fortunate to like not have this much in the music industry, but it's so measurable where your career's at with that person's. Like the comparison thing is crazy. Again, I'm very fortunate that I don't have, really, really big beef with any one of my fellow musician friends. And I can actually just feel joy for their successes. Shout out to friends who are gigging right now. It's great.
That's really big though. Like a lot of people would struggle to get to a place where they're able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky in that when I first got to where I went, when I started studying, I was not very good. I think I scraped through my audition and was lucky to be there. And, every person I encountered was just miles ahead of me. And I was so lucky to, at the very early stage, just recognize, hey, I'm the worst person in this room. Let's go. Like now I can take your expertise and your expertise. And I just don't think I've stopped that really, which is, I feel very lucky that from the outset, I really haven't had even the opportunity to go, oh, we were once on the same level and now you're over there. It's like, no, at no point were we on the same level. But I think that comparison thing is really rough, particularly when you feel, a really big wedge between you and that person, I think. Or when you've gone on a walk one direction and they've kept going. I wonder how much it's just in the human nature just to not care if you're that kind of person. I worry so much about the people that I might have hurt. I don't know if you have that worry too, but there are just people out there that are capable of just letting go or moving on or not even thinking about it. Is it maybe it's a church thing that we talk so much about hurts and trespasses and all these things, or maybe it's just a person thing. I don't know.
I actually wonder if it's like the other way around, because my church experience is so much about like reconciliation and community and all of these things. It's
like I'm just covered. Like
no, as in like I'm so coded to pursue reconciliation and community with everyone.
Yeah.
that I find it really hard, like you say, if I've something slipped and it's come out wrong and I've seen the look on their face change in the conversation and we've just moved on and it's not a big deal. But 3 days later, I'm awake at 1 o'clock in the morning thinking about it.
Yeah.
How much of that is because of my religious upbringing is around like, if there's anything between anyone, squash it, because we're all in community together and like we're all about doing life as a family together, as opposed to what I think is a very singular, individual focused secular culture often. I think that's a big sweeping broad statement. I think actually there's a lot of culture is pushing back against that in the wake of particularly what social media has left young people in the middle of.
Yeah.
But maybe there is that sense of like, well, they're not me.
Yeah.
So, if they have a problem, they'll chat to me, but otherwise like, hooroo,
Yeah. And I mean, I know a lot of people that have left church because of one-on-one things that haven't been reconciled weirdly. Well, no, not weirdly. As I know a lot of people that have just felt really hurt by singular groups, or smaller chunks of a larger community, and the church doesn't like the broad church can't seek reconciliation. It can't make that first step. It's for some reason it's always the onus is on the individual.
That's being interpersonal.
Whereas why? But the person hurt feels this hurt from the whole group, from the whole church.
Yeah.
They'll say, "Oh, I left, insert church name, because when I was there, this happened, and the church did nothing, or the church, perpetuated this, or whatever, or they didn't step in." And I just really wonder, how do we get better at that? As like how many people need to chase that person and chase that forgiveness from that person? Would you say like how many people in the group need to go after the hurt people for it to feel like the institution cares? You know?
Although how often, I don't think ever in my life, and this is a reflection on me, but like how often do we ask people for forgiveness? We do it in church. It's coded into our liturgy. Yeah. In terms of like admitting sin and asking for forgiveness and receiving grace and salvation through Christ. But we don't, I mean, maybe this is just me. Like, do we, when was the last time you asked your friend for forgiveness? Like,
hey, I'm sorry about this thing.
Yeah, could you forgive me?
Yeah, wow.
Not just I'm sorry, can you forgive me? Like, that's, to me, that's like, I'm just like role playing that in my head. It's like a SNL sketch of like just an awkward car crash. But like,
hey, sorry about that.
Yeah. Could you forgive me?
Just really quick. Real quick before the ambos come. Could you just forgive me?
Yeah. But like, I don't know. Is that something we need to do more of? Like,
as in on top of apologizing.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you forgive me?
Yeah.
Because like those words sound
wild,
horrendous.
They sound real bad,
and they feel not good coming out of my mouth.
Real bad. Yeah.
But that's probably a sign that needs to happen more. If we're so uncomfortable doing it, we're so out of that practice.
Ness did a really beautiful apology on Insta recent, like a while back. It was a beautiful clip of Ness apologizing to those who have been hurt.
Yes, it was actually in response to a listener question. But I remember,
But that was really beautiful, and it's amazing how much there was Ness kind of almost responding on behalf of an institution with remorse.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the leaders, but can we, is it weird for the institutional church to encode asking for forgiveness into that? Like, is the church able to? I was kind of mulling over this idea of a lot of churches will describe themselves as God's church. That's a real interesting one.
Yeah.
I'm like, God's church run by humans? I don't think that works. I think that clashes a little bit. And I wonder can God's church apologize? Can God's church ask for forgiveness? If it's God, right? I think that's separate to the idea of the Lord's table. You know, that's a welcome is the idea of the Lord's table. That everyone can be there, and I do mean that everyone can be at the Lord's table. But do we need to remove this idea of the church being a representative of God, you know, as opposed to representing followers of Christ or being a community, you know, as opposed,
like a body, like a union.
Yeah, nice.
It's the discipleship union.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I think it's Pope-like almost to be like, this is God's church. It's a little arrogant for me. I think it's a little too ignorant of our humanness.
Too idly for me, to be honest.
Real idly. Yeah.
Because we start making idols out of our church institutions as well, which is a really dangerous place to be in, I think.
Yeah. And where I'll bring this back in, I promise everyone. It's going to be like the highway where you go around and stop by Berry to get a donut. It'll be worth it.
There's donuts on the way.
There's donuts on the way.
Sweet bottle shop as well.
Yeah, it'll be real good. So when I was at a kind of pseudo alpha course, which is like a little like big condensed chat about the basics, the fundamentals of faith. And it wasn't an actual alpha course, but it was one that Newtown was putting on. And I went on one of the days, you know, I didn't go to all of them, but I popped in. And at that point, my idea of God was unlimited, outside of time, you know, omnipotent, all powerful, you know, all these things. And I can't remember the context in which it came up, but someone was like, no, God is limited. Cause you know, that's right. It was the topic of God's gender. And I was like, it's ridiculous to put gender on God because, God is unlimited. It's not like God has genitals or anything, you know, that would be insane, which I think it is, you know, back in that play, by the way. But someone said, no, God is limited, because people can make choices. God is limited by the fact that we are able to make decisions, which is so often why suffering occurs, because we make these choices against our friends and our you know, families. We were reading the Psalms last night at Evolve. A lot of talk of enemies. I don't know what's going on with these psalmists who have a lot of foes. Jeez,
they're creeping in on every side.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, and weeping into buckets. It's like my guy. Whoa. But you know, there's I just wonder to which the idea of God's church fails to recognize human autonomy and our ability to mess this up. We're an institution where we do fail, and it's actually going to be our ability to recognize that, our ability to heal relationships with people that we've hurt as an institution and individually. And it's going to be our ability to bounce back, bring people back in, and not into a chair that we've set out for them that looks like what we want them to look like, but into a chair that's them shaped, and let that shape us in and going into a direction that is beautiful, going into a direction that I think Christ calls us to go to and to be together, to follow him. I think there's something to be said there, probably, by someone more eloquent than me, perhaps.
Likewise with me. I'm just trying to think of a way to wrap this all together. This has been so vast, and
there's a lot of threads.
Covered a lot of threads. Yeah. I guess we've picked up on a lot of things as well that if people listening want us to go in on in more detail, like I think there's still, I know we did a whole episode on a few weeks ago as well, but like there's still so much I feel like left untalked about sin. Let us know, listeners, if there's more in any of this that we want to unpack. I don't know, I guess to round this off, where does this leave you sitting today? Like what are you institutionally or like personally, like where are you, what's your posture today in terms of like how you're approaching some of this stuff? Because it can be, I can speak for myself only, but it can be really demoralizing.
Yeah, totally. I think particularly, you know, you and I talk a lot about, one of the things I was worried we would tangent into by accident is the Uniting Church's kind of, not failure to kind of bring in young people, but, you know, it's something we're really passionate about is young people kind of being in community together, being together. And through that has come with a lot of acceptance about the institution that we're a part of, which, you know, we are in this institution. And so, I do think it's this pairing of radical love for my communities, right? The small, intimate communities, with a radical acceptance of the institution I'm a part of. And with that acceptance comes also, you know, a lot of communication and talking with that institution. We're lucky in the Uniting Church that there's a lot of access to the executives of the Uniting Church.
It's one of the good things about like the kind of flat structure is like you can talk to anyone.
Oh yeah.
There's like no reason why you can't. Like
100%. You know, I've not been in the Uniting Church very long. I've met the moderator of New South Wales many times, and I think that's a real testament to the Uniting Church's approach. It's not this kind of big person up the top and then it kind of scales down into different hierarchies like that. I think that's a really beautiful thing. So we're really fortunate in that way. It's easier to accept the institution we're a part of and accept those things. And I think I feel very blessed to have a lot of perspective from where I've come from as well. I accept what it is, and I also don't accept a lot of things about the church. And in a very beautiful way, I think the Uniting Church has been really gracious with my pushback in a lot of ways. Evolve, deeply, deeply accepting of me coming in and going, well, that's very silly, you know, and in a really gracious way. I think I've occasionally been harsh on Evolve, and it's been really beautiful. And so, there's a combination when you enter a church building where you're dealing with the interpersonal and you're dealing with the one-on-one and this large, you know, slightly larger groups and coming all together as one community. And I think that's really the beautiful part of church is being together. Having airport friends, you and I have talked about moving house friends. Yeah. You instantly get a slew of people who are willing to be there for you, which I think is really cool. But yeah, with that comes an institution that you love and work at and for and
in spite of.
And the Uniting Church, thankfully, is we're lucky, I think, to have the one we do have. You know, you and I have already, I think, seen change in the Uniting Church in the last maybe year.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would happen anywhere else. And I think that's really cool. So I don't know if that answers your question. I hope that's kind of in the ballpark.
No, I think it's a good place to leave people with at the end of this in terms of like, you're not forced into a single way of doing things in the church. And I want to actually extend this also to, because I know we do have listeners and people that tune in that are both not Uniting Church people, but also not church people. I hope this has been like
a blessing to you.
And any of this kind of unpacking that we've done can empower you to have conversations in whatever your setting is outside of the Uniting Church. Because I think it's church institutions almost like give us they're like little petri dish versions of like life.
They
the way that church institutions function can give us really good lessons and skills for how to approach doing life with people.
100%.
Yeah. We might wrap it there.
Nice.
How does that sound?
Sounds great.
I guess to send this one home, is there any like projects or things you want to tell people about?
Yeah.
Check out.
Follow me on Instagram if you want. Will Small asked me this when I was on thing and I was like, I don't know. But yeah.
Go and listen to the Spiritual Misfits episode with James as well.
Yeah, check that out. That'd be good. _James STJ James St. J. But yeah, check me out there. If any of this feels relatable to you, or you feel, maybe you're even just kind of in the middle of two communities, or you've just been hurt before and just don't know what to do with it, reach out. I'd be very, very happy to, listen to you or talk to you, or just, hear what's going on. So, or message the Filthy Hope group. I'm in that group and love being a part of that community. So fang it in there if any of this has kind of hit home for you. Definitely.
Yeah, cool. Like you said, send us an email. Join us in the Facebook group.
Any moustache complaints, filthyhopepod@gmail.com.
Actually, what you can do with the moustache complaints and any other complaints you have about the show is get a notebook. Yeah. Set yourself a timer for 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, good.
Complain to your heart's content for whatever the timer is, and then get a Sharpie, and cross it all out and burn it, because I don't want to hear it. No, I'm kidding.
For a second I thought you were going to say any other complaints, send it to topyourpod@gmail.com.
Send it to revness@Uniting Heart and Soul.
Yeah, just do that.
Just do that, yeah. Thanks for being here. What a treat. What a pleasure.
Treat for me.
You've been a blessing to me and to our listeners, I'm sure.
Thanks.
And you're welcome back anytime.
Oh, sounds fun.
Yeah. We'll be posting some more stuff about this as we get closer to the end of the year, but we have a stack of live events planned for next year.
Oh, yeah.
That I'm sure you will be at some, if not most of.
I'll be there.
So, yeah, if you want to hang out with either of us, keep an eye out for those dates and come chat to us there as well. Thanks for your time.
What a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.
This is a prayer for the people who want to give up, who have been hurt beyond repair and cannot bear to see your face in anything. Find peace in letting go of the guilt that is in yours, and find hope in us.